In this video, we're going to take an in-depth look at EVO 16's accompanying software, the EVO Mixer. The EVO Mixer is designed to give you intuitive control over your audio inputs and outputs, enabling you to effortlessly set up and control your routing, levels, and more. On a Mac, with the EVO app open, click on the EVO icon in the menu bar and then select Show Mixer. Or on Windows, right-click on the EVO icon in the System tray and select Show Mixer. Provided EVO 16 is connected to your computer and powered on, the Mixer window should then open. Simply put, the EVO Mixer is the control center for your EVO 16 interface, enabling you to customize monitoring, hardware functionality, and general settings to configure EVO 16 to suit your workflow. One of the main advantages of the EVO Mixer is the ability to set up ultra-low latency monitoring, enabling you to listen to your live inputs without any audible delay, and therefore ensuring you're getting the most out of your recordings. The EVO Mixer is made up of a few different sections. We'll go into detail for each of them over the course of this video. The channel section displays your analog inputs, your digital inputs, as well as your computer channels, or in other words, the audio coming back from your digital audio workstation or computer. The master section contains the cue mixes and the monitor controls. Then finally, you have the system panel, which enables you to control your routing and other settings. We will look at the routing options available in more detail later in this video. The channel section is what you will use to build up your main and cue mixes, or in other words, the audio you want to send out of EVO 16, whether it's your full mix going to your main speakers, or a customized headphone mix going to an artist you're recording, for example. There are 3 kinds of channels, each which can be hidden using these channel toggle buttons in the master section to help keep things tidy. Mic channels, which show any audio plugged into one of EVO 16's 8 inputs, whether a microphone, line level equipment, or an instrument. The digital channels show incoming signal from the optical inputs if you're expanding EVO 16 digitally. And the DAW channels show you what audio is playing back from your computer or audio software, where the EVO 16 output in your audio software will correspond to the computer channel. For example, output 1 and 2 will go to DAW 1 and 2, and output 3 and 4 will go to DAW 3 and 4. This will come in handy when sending out separate artist mixes or processing audio with outboard gear. Each channel can be named by double-clicking on the channel naming strip at the top. This is especially useful on the mic channels, as you'll be able to see the channel name on the EVO 16 screen while recording. If you forget the input type, you can hover over the channel toggle buttons and the type of input will appear under the name. As you can see, each channel has a fader. Turning up a fader will send that channel to your outputs depending on how you've set up your routing. By default, the main mix is sent to your line outputs and headphone outputs, and has DAW 1 and 2 turned up. This means that whenever you play audio from your computer, you should be able to hear it. If you were to turn up another channel, you would then be able to hear that. This simple concept will allow you to get as creative as you want with sending audio out of EVO 16. When turning up one of the inputs, you're making use of the ultra-low latency monitoring, meaning you can listen to your live inputs directly from the interface without your audio passing through your audio software, which can sometimes cause an audible and distracting delay. There are a few other features on the channels to help with your workflow. On the analog and digital input channels, a polarity reverse button can be found below the naming strip for dealing with phase issues caused from using multiple microphones. You can also use the pan control to balance the signal between the left and right sides in your speakers or headphones, so you can easily craft the perfect headphone mix. If you're using a stereo source, you can press the stereo mono button to link the channels together, allowing you to adjust the left and right sides of your signal at the same time for a more consistent listening experience. To help get your session set up, you can quickly mute or solo individual channels, meaning you can listen to them in isolation. At the bottom of a channel, you have the meter and fader. The meter displays the dBFS value, which is the level that comes into your computer. If the input is set too loud, the peak indicator will light up, meaning you have clipped your converters and could end up with some bad sounding distortion. We recommend setting your levels so at the loudest point you are peaking at -12 dB. For added flexibility, you can adjust the input gains of each of your inputs as well as turn on phantom power from the EVO Mixer by going to the View menu, then clicking Show Mic Pre-Controls. A control will then appear below each of the mic channels, allowing you to adjust your input gain levels and toggle phantom power on or off. This is also useful for quickly referencing your gain levels and checking which channels have phantom power activated. In the master section, you are able to toggle between different mixes: your main mix, typically used for your speaker output, and the cue mix, generally used for creating custom headphone mixes for artists you're recording. Simply click on the mix you want to edit and adjust the faders and pans on any of the channels you want to hear. If you want to preview the cue mix to hear what your artist will be hearing, you can hit the solo button in the cue window. You can also adjust the master level of the cue mix here too. The meters will show you the overall level of the cue, and the chronometer along the bottom will show you the level over the last 20 seconds, so you can see that the audio is being sent, whilst keeping an eye out for clipping. Next, we have the monitor control buttons. Here you have a number of different functions that can be used to help improve your workflow in the studio. Talkback, mono, alt speaker, dim, and cut. Alt speaker will switch to use an alternate set of outputs. This can be configured in the system panel, but is typically used if you have two sets of speakers and want to quickly switch between them. The Talkback button opens up a line of communication between the engineer and the artist, either using one of the mic inputs on EVO 16, any mic connected to your computer, or even your computer's built-in mic input. This is configured in the system panel. The mono button will combine the stereo mix into a mono signal, which is useful for checking if your mix will sound good on mono sound sources. The function button on the front panel can be customized to control any of these monitor control functions by right-clicking on the function and then selecting the function button. The system panel is where you can control most of the inner workings of EVO 16. On the left-hand side, you can find the digital settings. Here you can select the digital protocol you want to use for your digital input if you're using it, either ADAT or SPDIF. Below this is the preferred clocking source for use when you're using the digital input. Below this is the mono mode, letting you adjust which output is used during mono summing, either the left or right speaker individually, or both at the same time. Finally, at the bottom there are trim controls, where you can adjust the amount the outputs are reduced by when you activate dim, and where you can adjust the level of your alt speaker outputs so they sound consistent when you switch between speakers. And now we move on to the routing panel. This is where you decide what is played out of each of the line outputs or headphone outputs. The sources are displayed horizontally along the top, and the outputs are vertically on the left. To route the signal, click the button that lines up with both the source and destination you want. By default, the main mix is routed to analog outputs 1 and 2, which means that everything you have turned up in main mix will be sent to your main speaker outputs 1 and 2. The second set of line outputs are set to alt speaker by default, which means when you press the alt speaker button, this output will switch to play your main mix. By default, the remaining line outputs and headphone outputs are set to main mix, playing exactly the same thing that comes out of your speaker outputs. If you've built a low latency monitoring mix for an artist on one of the cue mixes and you want to send it to the headphones, you would select the corresponding cue for one of the headphone outputs. Door through allows you to directly route signal from your audio software to a physical output, bypassing all routing and volume controls. So for example, setting output 3 and 4 in your audio software would send that audio directly to physical outputs 3 and 4, ignoring any volume control. This is useful if you have a separate monitor controller and want to adjust levels there, or if you want to send audio out to external equipment. You will need to be careful of using door through on your outputs, as it will send full volume audio to your speakers, which might not be very pleasant. You will get a warning explaining this every time you select it, just in case you press it by mistake. You can set the outputs to mono by pressing the stereo button on the left. This will allow you to choose different sources for each output. This is useful if you want to send two different mono signals to different pieces of outboard gear, for example. The routing matrix works exactly the same for the digital outputs as it does for the analog outputs. By default, the digital outputs are all set to door through, meaning you can send signal out of outputs 9 and 10 in your door, and it would send it to the first two channels of the first digital output, and so on. The other tab in the routing panel is the Talkback tab, where you can select the input that you will be using for your Talkback source. This is your way of staying in contact with an artist by speaking directly into their headphones. Here you have the option to use one of EVO 16's inputs, whether analog or digital, or you're able to use an external source, which could be your computer's built-in mic, or even a USB microphone. When a Talkback source is selected, that channel will change into a Talkback channel in the EVO Mixer window. An external source will come in on door return 10. A Talkback channel can be identified by its solo and mute buttons changing into a Talkback button, which will trigger the Talkback. By default, the Talkback channel will be routed to all of the cue mixes, ready to be sent to your artist's headphones. Once you've set up the EVO Mixer just how you want it, you can save it as a preset, so you can quickly recall all your settings. To save a current setup, simply go to File, then Save. You can now give the configuration a name to remember it by and click Save. You can also export the configuration to send to friends or collaborators, or to store along with your project. To recall a preset again, simply go to File and then click Open. A list of your previously saved presets will appear. Choose the one you wish and then click Load. The mixer will now change to that particular preset. If you plan to use EVO 16 away from a computer, you can save a preset directly to EVO 16 itself, known as a standalone state. Great for complex monitoring mixes out on the road. To do this, simply go to the Setup menu and select Store Standalone State. The current configuration of the mixer will then be saved onto EVO 16's memory. The Mixer app always takes preference over the standalone state, so if the app is loaded and the unit is connected, then the standalone setting will be replaced. We know that workflow is important, which is why we designed the EVO Mixer to give you a wide range of options when recording, no matter what you're working on. So whether you go all out with features such as Artist Mix, or simply have it there in the background, the EVO Mixer is a powerful and flexible tool ensuring you get the most out of EVO 16 and your recordings. If you found this video useful, please give it a like, and if you have any questions about the EVO Mixer, then please leave a comment or get in touch with our support team and they'd be happy to help. And don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with EVO related news and video content.